What is up, everybody? Welcome back to 9 to 5 Gamers, and today we are finishing off our series of games of our top 10 party games of all time, and I've gone through a couple of lists, having 10 on each of those lists. There was about 4 of them in total, and today is the last one. And so if you guys are interested in this, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and if you are interested in supporting the channel, you can do that on through the memberships that we have here. But more so, I would prefer if you would support me through Ko-Fi. Ko-Fi is Kofi, and I'll probably put the little symbol up on this side. But Ko-Fi is a website that will take memberships and stuff like that. So I have all my memberships set up over there. And if you do that, I'll actually see more of that revenue. The goal of this channel is just to produce content, but also it'd be a nice way to provide some extra finances to help fund the channel, because I've got the new room set up and everything, but I need to get some lighting and new camera equipment. I'm recording everything on my iPhone, so I want to do a lot more with the channel, but in order to do that, I need your help and your support. So go ahead and go to Ko-Fi.com and support the channel. Just look up 9 to 5 Gamers. There should be a link in my channel that you can go ahead and check out, and I'll put it in the description as well. But without further ado, let's get into our final top 10 party games. And my number 10 on the list is a game called Mysterium. Mysterium is a lot like Dixit, so if you've ever played Dixit, it feels very similar, but in this game, it's very unique because you play with 7 people. Well, you can play with 7, but the idea of the game is kind of like Clue, where it's like a murder mystery. You're trying to figure out who's the murderer, and there's a bunch of suspects, but you have to narrow it down. And the way that you narrow down who the suspect is that there is a ghost that is in this mansion that you guys are in, and it's got this really cool mansion board and stuff like that. But in that game, the ghost will hand out visions, and those visions are like cards, like Dixit cards, and those visions will kind of give you an idea of which of the characters is the murderer, right? And so first you have to establish which room it happened in, what was the murder weapon, and who the suspect is, and you have to try to line up all of those things. And the only thing you have to go off is visions, and the ghosts can't tell you anything. They just have to sit there and hand you a vision, and then you can look at the vision and show everybody, and everybody's like, that's pretty interesting. I like the vision you got. That it kind of reminds me of this guy. I don't know. I think it's this, and people have difference of opinion. It's fantastic. It's so much fun, and it's just really cool with the table talk that it creates. My next game on the list, my number 9, is going to be King of Tokyo, and I really like the Dark Edition, but any version of King of Tokyo is fantastic. And King of Tokyo is just a party style game where you're just rolling dice and King of the Hill, right? King of the Hill is basically one guy stands at the top of the hill and everybody's trying to knock him down so that they could become King of the Hill. And I guess that's what King of Tokyo is. It's a play on the words King of the Hill. But a King of Tokyo, your character goes into Tokyo. Whoever's in Tokyo will start to gain points. In order to gain points, you can knock them out of Tokyo. And if you can stay there for a complete round in Tokyo, you end up getting a lot of points while everybody's attacking you and doing different things. So the goal of the game is to get to like 20 points or to knock out all of your opponents. And it's really fun as you roll dice and you get all these little claw symbols, and you're like, you know what? I'm just going to go all out and I'm going to hit everybody for like 6 damage. It's awesome, man. And if you can knock out your opponents, you actually win that way too. So there's so many fun ways to win the game. There's unique powers that you can buy and stuff like that, and cool characters. I really like this game. It's very simple. Kids can play it, very kid friendly, but it's just an amazing smash hit at every single party that I've played it at. Next game on my list, my number 8, is Taco Cat Goat Cheese Pizza. This game speaks for itself. It is a small little $10-15 box with cards in it. But the way that the game works is that you're going to be putting cards down from your hand. Your goal is to get rid of all the cards in your hand and be the first person to do that. But as you put cards down, the cards have pictures on them, and you're going to say, in order, Taco Cat Goat Cheese Pizza, and then everybody says a word. Taco Cat Goat Cheese Pizza around the circle until the word that's said matches the card that was played. Once that happens, everybody has to put their hand in the center, and if you're the last person on top of the pile, you end up having to take the whole entire stack of cards, put them into your stack, and then keep going after that. First person to successfully put their hand in the middle with no cards is the winner. And so very, very fun game. Really, really love this game, and I've had tons of fun playing it. My recommendation is to remember to tell people to take their rings off their hands, just because sometimes the rings can hurt your knuckles if you do it. But with my group, it's hilarious. And then there's special cards that, the narwhal, for example, you're supposed to put your hands above your head like this and then put your hand down on the pile, and people would just like throw their entire bodies on the tables. It's hilarious. Very fun game. Really recommend playing that. Next game on my list is a game called Poetry for Neanderthals, and a lot of these games are great because you can just find them at Target. But Poetry for Neanderthals is like a word game, and the idea is that you pick up a card, and that card is going to have the word fire on top, and then on the bottom it'll say campfire. If you can get the top word, you get 1 point. If you get the bottom word, you get 3 points. And so you can kind of like break it apart into 2 pieces. So it's like I can kind of, it's like charades, but you're explaining it only. You can't use gestures. And as you're explaining it though, like you want to explain fire, you can only use 1-syllable words. So it's like hot thing in ground, roast, small white square, right? And it's like, oh, fire, you know, it's like, okay, fire. And then once you get that word, you're like, fire at place where people make tents. And it's like, oh, campfire. And it's like, there you go, campfire. And so then I got my 3 points, and then I just pick a new card and I just keep doing that. But if you use a word that has multiple syllables, or if you use the word that's on the card on accident, or if you mess up in some way, then the game comes with a huge inflatable like stick, like caveman stick, and you get to whack your friends with it, and it doesn't hurt. It's just great, man. It's such a fun game. I've had nothing but a blast. First time I saw this played was at a Dice Tower recap video that the Dice Tower did of one of their conventions, and I saw an old couple playing it, and I was like, what is the game with the mallet? That thing looks cool. I was like, what is that? And so I looked it up online, and I was like, oh, that's Neanderthals, and I found it at Target one day, and I was like, yo, loved it ever since. Next game on my list, another game you can find at Target, is called The Chameleon. The Chameleon is a social deduction game, but not in the sense where everybody's playing a role, but rather just more so like there's like a grid of words, and it'll say like artists, for example, and it'll have a bunch of different artists on there, or it might say musicians or pop stars, things like that, video games, things, common topics like that, and all of these things are lined up on there. And then you roll some dice, and those dice, whatever the 2 dice reads, you look up that code on the little card you get at the beginning of the game, and that'll show you what the secret word is out of all the words. So then after that, you have to come up with a word that has to do with that. So if the word was Michelangelo, you could be like green, right? And then everybody else in the circle would be like, green? Oh, green. I get it. And it's like turtle. And then somebody says that, and you're like, oh, why'd you say turtle? Somebody's gonna like get it, right? Like, because the whole point is that when you play the Chameleon, everybody's going to say a secret word, but there's one person who's left out, because when you open up your code card, it'll say you are the Chameleon, but it's not going to give you any codes. You actually don't know what the word is, and you're trying to listen to the clues and hope that they don't find out, or say something really general if you end up having to go first. And then everybody has to social deduct and go, I didn't like your clue. Your clue was very vague. I don't think you, but that doesn't even make sense to what the word is. And then people are vouching for one another like, no. They know what they're talking about. Trust me, it's an inside thing. I know that they're not. And then all of a sudden they're the Chameleon. You're like, what the heck? I knew they were the Chameleon. So their job is to try to blend in with everybody else, even though they don't belong there. It's a real fun social deduction game. It's super hilarious and really fun to have the conversations they have afterwards. But that's it for that one. I think this is my number 5. It's Strike. Strike is a dice game. I found it at a board game garage sale for $5. And this game, you just roll dice, and obviously it has all the numbers from 1 to 6, but the number 1 is actually like an X. So when you roll the dice, you get 1 dice and you roll it into the little bowl that it comes with. And when you roll the dice in there, if you get a match, like if there's you start off with 1 dice in there, and if whenever you throw it in, it matches the number on the other dice, and the 2 dice match, you can collect those dice and put them into your hand, and then you can keep going if you wanted to, or you can just say, I'm good, and then you can pass it off to the next player. If you roll an X, your turn ends. Actually, I think if you roll an X, your turn doesn't end. You actually can just keep going, and it just gets removed from the bowl. But the whole point of the game is to knock out all the other players until nobody has any dice left except for you. And then you're the winner of the game. But it's really fun because you can actually like angle the dice when you throw them to knock the other dice and change the numbers up a little bit. You can knock a whole bunch of dice around. Super satisfying. And then when you clear out the bowl, where it's like there's only like, let's say there was 3 dice in there, and you roll your dice in, but all the dice match, and you take all the dice out, then the next player has to roll all of their dice in their hand. They have to roll all of them into the bowl at the same time, and whatever matches they get, they can keep. It's fun, man. Strike is such a fun game. We have like little tournaments for it sometimes, and we just have an amazing time with it. It's super fun. And if you can find it cheap, I think online it's like maybe $20. If you can find a copy of Strike, like the newer versions, I think they even have a Harry Potter one. Such a fun game. Definitely recommend playing that one. My number 4 on the list is a game called Telestration. So if you've never played Telestrations, you have probably played the telephone game, right? The telephone game is, man, that's how old I am, right? When you know you're old whenever you do telephone like this instead of like this. But yeah, so Telestrations is basically the game Telephone, where you are going to, you know how like you tell somebody a word and you're like, the word is peanut butter sausage. And then all of a sudden, the next person gets it and they're like, you know, peanut sausage. And then all of a sudden it turns into something it really shouldn't have turned down into all the way down at the end of the line as it's being passed on. Telestrations is like that, except with drawing. So you get a little notebook and there's a word. You write your word down and then you pass the book. The person will look at the word and go, okay, so they flip the page and then they draw that word. Then the next person they're going to pass it again. The next person's going to see the picture they just drew and then flip the page over and try to write what they think the word is. And you keep doing this, but it gets passed around a bunch of times till at the end it's like, how did cookie or moon turn into cookie? And it's like you can kind of, it's just really funny. The seeing the transformations of the word over time. It's hilarious because you get to go through it at the end and flip through all the books, and then whoever, you know, had the closest one is the one who gets the points. But we never play with points. We just do it for the laughs because it's absolutely hilarious. I think even the rule book recommends don't even play with like points, just play for fun. Actually, I think that was a different game. But anyways, this game is really, really fun. I enjoy playing it even without points. My recommendation, if you're going to buy Telestration, go on Amazon or see if you can find it at a local game store, but get the 12-player party pack. The reason why you want to do this is because each of these books is going to come with 12 pages, so you can actually play with 12 players. If you buy the 6-player kits from like Target, they're only going to have 6 pages. And then the problem with that is that you can't just buy 2 and put them together, because then if you're playing with 12, it's only going to go up 6 and then it's going to stop. So you're not going to get the full effect. So the 12-player party pack is the one that's the best. And it comes with a ton of cards. It actually comes with, like, I think, like 2 decks of cards. Highly recommend. Telestration's great game. Next game on my list, man, could have been number 1, to be honest with you. Any of the next 3 could have been number 1. This game was probably my number 2 for a long time. I don't even know, or maybe my number 1. But it's the game Love Letter. Like, classic, just plain classic Love Letter. There's a lot of expansions. There's a lot of iterations. There's a Star Wars Love Letter. There's a Batman Love Letter, which is really hard to find. I think I found like a sealed copy for like $75 or $100. It's expensive because it's like out of print, but I heard it's really good. But there's a ton of them. There's like a Marvel one, but I like the plain classic version of Love Letter, and it's a fun social deduction game where it's not really social deduction, it's just like a card game. So you have one card in your hand, then on your turn you draw a card, and from those 2 cards you have to play one face up in front of you, and each card has a number 1 through like 13 or 12 or something, and then after that on the bottom it has an ability. Oh yeah, there's a 0 as well, and you use the ability, and the ability might say point to a player. That player has to discard the card from their hand and get a new one. And the whole point of the game is to just, like, if in order to win, you have to have the highest numbered card. The highest numbered card, I believe, is the princess. I think it only goes up to like 9, maybe. I don't even remember. But the highest number, I think, is 9 in the game. It's 0 through 9. The princess is 9, so you want to get the princess card. But if somebody catches you, like if they use a card called a guard and it says point to a person and guess what card they have, if they guess that you have the princess, you have to put it down and show them, and if you do, you automatically lose the game. And then the next highest character would win, like the king, which is like an 8. Then there's the queen, which is like a 7. There's a lot of cool, interesting little mechanics to the game, and bluffing, and, you know, social deduction, or deduction in the sense where it's like, okay, there's how many guards are in play, that means there's not any more guards. There's all the princes are out, so you can't have the prince. This got the barons out, so there's only 1 baron left in the deck. So it's really, really fun. The more you play it, the better you get at it, the more fun it becomes. I absolutely love Letter. My favorite games of all time. Next game on my list, my number 2, which is a complete shock because I really do feel like this should have been number 1. But it's insane that it's a number 2 slot, because it definitely is just the best, and that is JustOne. JustOne is just the best party game of all time. It is so inviting, so welcoming. It's fun to watch. right? Like you don't even have to necessarily play it, just watching it is fun. I like games that are like that, where it's like I don't necessarily need to play, but I can watch it and I can go, wow, this is really funny actually. This is hilarious. The way the game works is that there's going to be a card and a person that's going to have like 5 options on it, 1 through 5, and the person's going to pick blindly because they can't see the card. They're going to pick a number, and whatever word is on that number, you have to try to help that person guess it by writing a clue that has to do with that word. But the thing is, nobody else can see your word, so you're going to write it down and put it face down. Then at the same time, while the person's eyes are closed, you're going to show your clue, and if your clue matches anybody else's, you have to erase it because you can only have just one of each clue. And so sometimes you end up with only one clue and the person has to try to guess. It's a cooperative game, you're working together, but it's so much fun. And it's so cool to see the unique things that people write down for the clues. And sometimes it's funny whenever you have like 3 or 4 people who wrote the same word. You're like, why would you write that? Man, now we only have 2 clues. It's such a fun game. And I feel like too, if you bought like more copies of it, you could probably get away with playing, like if you have 2 copies of JustOne, you could probably play a larger game than 7, which is absolutely fun. I love this game. JustOne has been my favorite party game of all time for such a long time until today, which is insane because this game flew under my radar and maybe a lot of people's radar. I don't know how many times I saw this game in like Barnes and Nobles and I said, I would never buy this game. This looks like garbage. Like I would never buy this. And I've literally ignored it for years, and then eventually I played it at a con. I loved it, and then I bought a copy immediately as soon as I found a copy in the stores. I bought it for like $5, and every person that I've introduced this to, except for my wife, don't understand why she doesn't enjoy it, but I think maybe it has to do with like a social thing and kind of like the idea. But it's the game Banza. This is a negotiation game, and the way that this game works is that you are growing 2 beanstalks, and so from your hand, you're going to have a couple of cards in your hand at the beginning of the game, and the order that they're in has to stay like that, kind of like Scout. You have to keep it in the order that it's in. You can't mix them around, and then you have to plant at least a minimum of 1 but up to 2 beans from the top of your hand of cards. And so when you plant these beans down, you have to continue to get more of that bean, because the more of that bean you have, the more you can sell it for and the more points you'll get for selling them, and whoever has the most points wins. But it's fun because sometimes you have there's a bean that's just in the way, and it's like, man, I've got 2 coffee beans coming up and I have my stack of coffee beans. I need to get rid of this green bean. And then all of a sudden you see somebody puts a green bean down and they're like, oh, I got a coffee bean. Anybody want a coffee bean? I'll give you a green bean for the coffee bean. And you have to just trade beans. But you don't want to help people win. But if you don't do that, you end up losing out, because next time your turn goes around, you'll have to sell one of your beanstalks and plant the new one, because you can't just keep it there and ignore what's in your hand. You always have to plant. This game has a lot of interesting rules, but once you teach it, the flow of it, people get it. It's easy, and man, no game that I've ever played has been the same. It's always been so interesting the way these negotiations work out. People, I want to help you, I'm going to help them because they're not winning, and this is that, and the person comes back, they're like, oh, why did I ever help you out? Sometimes you have to give beans away for free just to get them out of your hand. You're like, listen, I'll just give you coffee beans, and you have to do that. And there's rules for trading where you can only trade when it's your turn, but you can trade with anybody. And so people will offer you deals, and people are making deals off on the side going, yo, when it's your turn, I'm going to give you a green bean. Just make sure you hook me up. And it's funny, man. Like, it is just phenomenal game. I really highly recommend this, and I'm surprised it actually became my #1 party game of all time. If you can find a copy of this, you can. It's actually pretty easy. They came out with like a 25th anniversary or something of it. The game came out in like the 1990s. I think it was like 1995 or 97 when this came out. It's old, man. That's not old. We're not old. I'm not old. But the game is definitely a little bit older on the older end, but they made an anniversary edition that you can find on Amazon right now. It's super easy to get on Amazon, but in stores, it's not that easy to find. So I highly recommend this. If you ever find a copy, pick it up immediately. It's so much fun. Great negotiation game. If you don't like negotiation, you probably won't like the game. I think that's maybe the reason why my wife doesn't like it. She's not into negotiating with people. She always feels like bad because it's like, I feel like I'm making a bad deal, and I feel like I'm ripping people off, and I don't want to be rude. And if you're not not into that, you won't like it. But it's so much fun. This is my #1 party game, Banza. And honorable mention to a game that I put on my party games last time, but it's not really a party game, man. I can't classify it as that, but that's Blood on the Clock Tower. Love that game. Check out No Rules Barred. They just put out a brand new season they're putting out a brand new season of Blood on the Clock Tower, where they have like actual actors who are coming in and doing this, and they're hilarious, man. I love their team and I love their group, but Blood on the Clock Tower would instantly be one of my favorites. Probably be #1 or #2 on this list for sure if it was I considered a party game. I just don't think a lot of people do. I think a lot of people, last time I put that on there, they're like, that's not really a party game. But to each his own, right? Anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget, go to ko-fi.com. Support the channel. Anything from like $3, $5, $10. You get exclusive content and a whole bunch of really good stuff, man. Please support the channel so that way we can get this thing to the next level. I got a current goal on there of how much I'm trying to make off the Ko-Fi channel. And if I can make that amount of money, man, it'll be awesome because it'll support the channel. It'll help me financially to pay all the things that I need to pay for. A lot of decorations, a lot of decor, a lot of things that I gotta get going in this place. And man, it would be awesome to have that an amazing stream of revenue coming in so that way we can keep this channel up and running. Got some really cool things in the works, man. Thinking about starting up a second channel about movies and TV show reviews, maybe even doing some video game streaming. We're doing all sorts of media, so I'm really excited for that. So I will give you some more information once I decide what I'm going to do with all of that. But in the meantime, thank you guys for so much for subscribing to the channel and for commenting. In the comment section, put down what is your favorite party game of all time, and I'll talk to you guys in the comment section. See you guys later. Peace out. Love y'all. Deuces.